Evil is the absence of good, but quite often we think of good and evil as a physical binary. That if good can take physical forms like gods, angels, and saints, then evil must also take physical forms like demons, goblins, and ogres. We see the world in terms of binary, of right and wrong, of chaos and order, of creation and destruction, and of angels and demons. But the way different cultures interpret these representations can vary, and what they do, how they behave, and their overall motives can be quite different. The three primary classes of For Honor, Knight, Samurai, and Viking, all have their own variants of creatures that stand opposed to order and good. Today, we're going to take a look at the three primary examples and understand the differences between them. And before you ask, I will not be looking at the Wu Lin in this video, only because Chinese demons are not my subject that I'm very familiar with, and I'll require far more research on the subject. Perhaps in a later video, I can go more into the Chinese interpretation of demons. But for now, we're looking at the first three. Beginning with the Vikings. The Norse worshipped the Aesir, the gods of Norse mythology, who dwelled in the realm known as Asgard. Mighty, powerful, and respected, the Asgardians sought to preserve the stability and balance of the world. But there was a race that was seen as chaotic and destructive. Dwelling mostly within the inhospitable land of Jotunheim, the Jotnar, or Yoten, were a race of beings that stood in opposition to the gods. Often described as giants, this wasn't always the case, as some Yoten were not as large or intimidating as others. It varied from individual to individual. In most legends and stories from Norse mythology, the Yoten are depicted as chaotic and have the intent to destroy or disrupt the gods. But they did not begin this way. In the beginning of the world, there was nothing but darkness and an endless chasm. It was a world of chaos, of nothing but crushing winds and destructive lands. From the venom of two intersecting rivers came the first creature, a Yoten named Ymir. Born as both man and woman and capable of giving birth to both, Ymir produced male and female entities from his armpits. These offspring would be the first Yoten. Over time, another progenitor would be revealed, Buri, the first of the gods. Buri would beget three grandchildren, Odin, Vili, and Ve, who would one day slay Ymir and use his body to shape the world. As the poetic Edda says, quote, Ymir's flesh was earth created, of his blood the sea, of his bones the hills, of his hair trees and plants, of his skull the heavens, and of his brows the gentle powers formed Midgard for the sons of men, but of his brain the heavy clouds are all created. Some attest that this killing of Ymir caused the initial split between the Jotun and the gods, but as creation came from a giant, destruction would too. In the destruction myth of the Norse Ragnarok, it is said that Jotun will enter one final and bloody battle against the gods, and the fire giant, Surt, would lead his kin to defeat the gods and accomplish their ultimate goal, the return of the world to its primordial root, to chaos. It's easy to see the Jotun as wicked and evil, but the truth is that this isn't entirely accurate. There are cases where the Jotun were not only neutral or peaceful, but even beneficial to gods and man alike. There are even giants like Skadi who are worshipped by certain Nordic peoples. Heck, Odin himself is half Jotun, as his mother was a Jotun, and Thor is 3/4 Jotun. It's hard to attest that all are evil, so where does this come from? Well, the word Jotun is taken from the Nordic word Jotnes, or Itnaz, and means devourer. The Jotun are therefore the devourers. They devour what the world is to return it to chaos. But usually because where the Jotun are involved, they are the predecessors to something new. The Jotun seek the destruction of the current world so that a new world can be built on the ashes of the old. They devour what is to better create that what will be. Consider Ymir, the first Jotun. His body was born in and surrounded by chaos, but it was from his demise that creation sprang forth. Some Jotun choose to approach this differently than others, while others just choose not to concern themselves with it at all. There are still cases of beneficial and even romantic relationships between the Jotun and the gods, so it's not like the Jotun cannot coexist. But bitterness at the death of Ymir, dissatisfaction at being forced to dwell in a realm like Jotunheim, and perhaps even jealousy of what the Aesir have, lead many to despise them. While the Jotun seek to devour the world and turn it back to chaos, the Aesir are meant to keep the devourers in check, to control them and to keep them restrained. That is perhaps why they are worshipped by humans, because they are the bulwark between calamity and order. Lucky for the Aesir, they have Thor, the Jotun killer. Thor is particularly famous for his ability to slaughter Jotun and giants, but on the day of Ragnarok, the Jotun will finally have their way. The Aesir will fall, mankind will fall, and the Yoten will fall as well. The current world will die, for a new one to come. The Yoten are forces of nature. They are embodiments of chaos, but also preludes to creation. They are the wrath of those who suffered injustice, but they are also the potential peace that can come from change. In certain interpretations of the myths, the Yoten are even portrayed in a sympathetic light as those who have been unjustly treated and are now lashing out in an attempt to make change. I tend not to err on this side of the discussion. The Yoten are a force of destruction, and while something new might come from it, it might not be their own intention, and we might not even especially like what new comes. It was not Ymir's will what was done with his body. It was the will of the gods, after all. Who knows what fate awaits the world if the Yoten ever truly had their say. Now, far to the east in the lands of Japan, the Japanese have their own spirits of malevolence and destruction. To the feudal Japanese, it was believed that a spirit dwelled in all things, so it was important to pay respect to all things, both inanimate and animate. Show honor and respect to the forest, to the wind, to the sea, and to the animals. This keeps the spirits happy. However, anger them, and they can turn hostile. Mistreat, harm, or kill a creature or human, and their spirit might not find rest or respite. They may return as an aratama or a yokai. Yokai is a general term for any form of spiritual creature who interact with mortals. They may range anywhere from benevolent to malevolent, though most are not very hospitable. One of the most famous of all yokai is a creature whose name can roughly translate to ogre or demon, the Oni. Appearances vary, but in most interpretations, Oni are large, hulking creatures with horns emerging from their head, massive tusks or fangs, large, vicious eyes, sometimes a third in their forehead, and blue, red, or green skin. They often wear loincloths of animal hides and carry a massive kanabo club as their weapon. It is believed that Oni are the result of wicked humans who died horribly, and their spirits return as vengeful spirits, or Oni. The most wicked and debased people will turn into Oni while they're still alive, and the more wicked and evil and the more powerful the Oni they become. Oni are known to indulge in alcohol and violent acts of destruction. They might even be willing to feed on humans if so inclined. In more recent years, however, Oni have started to take on a less wicked role. Some stories claim that truly powerful Oni guard the underworld and punish sinners, and others attribute that Oni aren't necessarily evil, they're just gluttonous, trickster-like, and mischievous. Oni are said to have otherworldly powers, like some could potentially impact the weather, create illusions, or even teleport. In some more recent cases, Oni are depicted as protectors or guardians. Thanks to anime as well, Oni have become far less wicked in attitude and nature in some interpretations, even becoming more human, rational, and friendly. This is partially because Oni can also be used to mean ogre, which can be seen as far less violent or wicked than a demon or destructive force. But with that said, some anime and popular media still display the Oni as destructive and vengeful creatures, like in the anime Demon Slayer. In the original Japanese, the antagonists are referred to as Oni, humans turned into vampiric monsters that feed on the blood and flesh of humans to survive and can only be killed by the sun, or by decapitation with a special blade. These demons, for the most part, are purely wicked and destructive, though there are exceptions, showing that the Oni hasn't quite lost its roots as destructive forces in the eyes of Japan. We see in For Honor the Oni portrayed by the Shigoki, their name literally meaning guardian demon. The ki in their name, Shigoki, is the same character used to say Oni. The Oni struck fear in the hearts of normal men, but their presence could also be used to inspire fear in the hearts of an enemy. Oni masks, emblems, and symbols were used to create fear, to represent wicked intent, or to discourage approach. Oni might not stand as an opposition to a god or to a holy order, but they are a symbol of destructive chaos. While the Yoten that we discussed earlier might symbolize the natural inclination to return to chaos, the Oni are more representative of the inherent destructive chaos within mankind, as Oni are the result of a corrupt and wicked soul. The Oni in popular fiction notwithstanding, the cultural Oni is a devastating demon to be sure, and the impact they've had on the culture of Japan is unquestionable. But the final example is far different. The knights of Europe who followed the Christian doctrines are taught of God and heaven, the angels that sing his praises, and the holy truth of salvation. But there they were also taught of the legions of unholy beings who would stop at nothing to oppose this truth. The fallen angels, the demons of Judeo-Christian teachings. In Judeo-Christian teachings, different denominations and sect of Christianity and Judaism have various different interpretations of the origins and nature of demons. Here I will address the ones that have been most widely understood. According to the Bible, at some point before the advent of mankind, the most glorious and beautiful of all of God's angels, Lucifer, pronounced himself equal to God, perhaps even greater. He claimed that he should be the one to perhaps sit on heaven's throne. There were many angels that agreed with him, and thus they planned a revolt, but God was furious with Lucifer for his betrayal and his heretical stance. He cast Lucifer and his followers from heaven and banished them to the earth, forever separated from him. Lucifer, whose name is also Satan, now is master of the earth, wandering from here and there like a lion waiting to strike. He detests God's creation and wishes to see it destroyed. He will take as many of God's children to damnation as he can. His followers, the angels cast down with him, are often believed to have become the demons that we hear about in Judeo-Christian teachings. Ironically, in the Bible, demons are not the subtle and sneaky tricksters or temptresses we see in popular media. Nowhere in the Bible do demons tempt humans. Only Satan himself does this. In the Bible, demons are violent, wicked, and cruel. Also, very interestingly, demons are never described to have a physical and tangible form. Artists and sculptors often depict them as horned, wicked creatures with bat-like wings and beaks for mouths, with hoof-like legs and gnarled teeth with big, evil eyes. But this is often an attempt to describe what they would consider most evil in appearance. When they do manifest, they often manifest by possessing people, entering their bodies and plaguing them, forcing them to tear at their own flesh, lash out at anyone and anything near them, speak in tongues, and viciously harm themselves. In cases where a demon takes a man or woman, the people must lock them away for their own safety, and this usually has mixed results, as demon-possessed men and women could be inhumanly strong. However, it's clear that despite being opposed to God, they also are subject to his will. When Jesus approaches those under the influence of a demon, there are cases where the demon begs Jesus' mercy. In Mark 5, Jesus encounters a man possessed by a multitude of demons, and the demons plead with Jesus not to cast them into the abyss. Jesus instead casts them into a herd of pigs nearby. The pigs, taken by the demons, flee and jump into the sea. Jesus exorcised many during his time on earth, showing his power and control over them. But he wasn't the only one. After Jesus' ascension, his disciples were also known to have exorcised demons in his name, but it was always clear by whose authority they did it. In Acts 19, Paul the apostle traveled through Ephesus preaching the word of God and performing miracles like casting out demons. And a few young men attempted to do the same thing by casting out demons from a possessed man by saying, "In the name of Jesus Christ, whom Paul preaches about, I command you to come out." The demon replied, "I know Jesus, I know Paul, but I don't know you." The demon-possessed man then beat the men so furiously they fled the house naked and bleeding, showing that you have to have Jesus' authority backed within you to be able to do such things. It's not just something you can easily do.
We are not afraid of you. You have no power here, teacher.
Judeo-Christian folklore goes beyond just what the Bible offers, however, as many interpretations and sects can be found that discuss things such as demonology and demon hierarchies. Some sects argue that fallen angels are just a higher rank of demons, and that paganistic spirits and demons are of a lower rank. That there are certain demons that specialize in certain articles of sin and wickedness, and these demons can sometimes take a physical form or appearance that we as humans more easily recognize. The Succubus, for example, is a sex demon, a demon whose sole purpose is to tempt men into sexual depravity and steal their souls. In the 12th century book, De Nugis Curialium, it was rumored that Pope Sylvester II had an experience with a succubus who helped him rise through the ranks in the Catholic Church. But this is just one popular example. There are also tales that say demons will offer deals in exchange for souls, such as the Crossroads demons. This folklore states that if you give your soul to a demon, they will grant you earthly desires, but you will go to hell when you die. While this is never present in the Bible, it's a popular interpretation. In popular culture today, some of our favorite movies, TV shows, games, and books use Judeo-Christian ideas and inspiration for their demons, notably the Warhammer franchise. Indeed, Warhammer 40k has often used Christian influence as the inspiration for its stories, including some of its demons. There are also several horror movies in which humans do battle against demon-possessed humans with limited success, the most famous being The Exorcist. Strangely enough, despite the evil reputation of demons, there are still some pop culture stories, books, and movies in which demons are showed in a less antagonistic light. Shows like Lucifer, The Devil is a Part-Timer, Supernatural, and plenty of others, demons have started to come into a sympathetic, or at least relatable light, which I'm not entirely sure how I personally feel about that. In fact, as we analyze all three of these examples, is it right to attribute good and evil? With the Yoten, you could argue that they're simply attempting to restore chaos to create something new, that since they exist in opposition to the gods, they are made evil by default. And with Oni, you could potentially argue that not all Oni necessarily are evil, and in a more modern context, the idea of an Oni as a defender is a more appealing notion to a culture that has evolved. But with demons, devils, and fallen angels, these are entities that chose evil and separation from the holy God. They do not bring anything good in any interpretation. While they may promise earthly pleasure or desire to come in certain works, they always guarantee a price, usually in your immortal soul. In biblical scripture, they are destructive, dangerous, inhumanly strong, and wicked. Are these really creatures to see in a sympathetic light, when their only goal is to destroy or corrupt as much of humanity as they can? Whatever the answer is to that question, we can see a commonality in all three of the examples here. All cultures, despite their differences in origin, folklore, and culture, recognize the results of evil and chaos, and they have established entities and beings that act as their harbingers and emissaries. Modern culture and media have often tried to change the meaning or goals of these creatures to be more relatable or more understandable. But the better we understand evil, the more we can appreciate good. By recognizing the wickedness that creates an Oni, it is a better way to teach children how to be righteous so they never meet that fate. By understanding the dangers of demons and their desire to harm or lead astray, we better learn the goodness and power that is God. And from the Jotun's insistence on bringing the world to chaos, we are more willing to pray to the gods for their continued work to subdue and curtail them. Denying the existence of evil does not remove it from the world. It makes us less capable of understanding the good in the world. If we have no concept of the darkness, then the light is harder to appreciate. Our ancestors understood this, and that's why these entities are still talked about and revered today, for better or worse. Thanks for joining me on this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Take care.